Good afternoon, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So today in this video, we are going to take up the important articles for 19th of January 2023. So firstly, Election Commission of India has announced the elections for Tripura, Meghalaya, and Nagaland. So here you can find out about the Model Code of Conduct, and that is the important thing for us to know. And spot-bellied eagle owl has been spotted in Andhra Pradesh in the Seschalam forests. And the bird's habitat, it is found on large trees in thick forest. It is spread across the Indian subcontinent. So it is found across India. And you should be knowing that the Nagarjun Sagar Sri Salem Tiger Reserve is there in Andhra Pradesh. And the mottled wood owl and the spot-bellied eagle owl, they are least concerned. So their IUCN status is least concerned. Coming to the editorials, so talking about the situation or the civil war that has been going on for the past 13 years in Syria. So here the countries involved are majorly the dispute is there between Syria and Turkey, but however, Russia is also there and with US presence also. So we'll be looking at what is this dispute and what is the situation after 13 years. So firstly, we see that there's regional diplomatic implications of it. So amidst this Ukraine war, we see that Turkey, it has continued its balancing act between United States and Russia. So it has supplied drones to Ukraine, but it has also facilitated agreements relating to grain supplies through the Bosphorus Strait. So open your atlases and find out the location about the Bosphorus Strait. And Turkey has refused to join the Western sanctions on Russia. So that's how it is trying to balance between Russia and US. And Turkey and Russia, they have continued to work closely together in Syria, though there are differences. And on the question of the Kurds, so the Russian and the Syrian priority is to detach the Kurds from the US, curb their separatist aspirations, and ensure there is integrity in Syria. So they hope to address the Turkey's demand for a 30-kilometer security zone across the Syria-Turkey border by replacing the Kurdish militia that is there with the Syrian government troops. So this is the demand of Turkey. And Turkey wants to set up a kind of buffer zone between Turkey and Syria. And it wants the Syrian government troops to be present there instead of the Kurdish militia. So that is there. And talking about the outlook for Syria, so Syria believes it has a much stronger hand than earlier. It believes that it has become much stronger and it is being increasingly included within the Arab fold. So besides the UAE and Bahrain, and they have also opened their embassies in Syria. And talking about the presence of US in the region, so US remains firmly opposed to Russia-sponsored tripartite talks. So obviously, US does not want the presence or intrusion of Russia into this conflict. However, when we talk about the presence of US troops, so there are 900 troops in the northeast Syria, but they have no idea regarding what purpose they are to serve there. So they are just present. And again, Russia and Iran, they remain strong supporters of Syria's crucial interest. So Russia, Iran are supporting Syria, and there is Turkey. And they're supporting the eradication of the HTS extremists at the Idlib region in the Idlib province, and they are demanding dilution of the Kurdish aspirations for autonomy and also the incorporation of the Kurds within the Syrian state. So all of these trends, they are suggesting that in the coming year, after more than a decade, we could see a slow return to peace in Syria. So we cannot say there is so much of development that is happening, ensuring that there is peace in the region. So that is one thing. And talking about Jallikattu, so we have seen that Supreme Court, it has reserved its judgment on a batch of petitions that were filed regarding the Jallikattu issue. So it is yet to be released. And you need to be knowing about the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act of 2017. And recently we have seen that 5 men, they have lost their lives in Tamil Nadu during the events of Jallikattu, and it was earlier banned by Supreme Court, but then it again resumed from January 2017 after 3 years of ban. However, the state of Tamil Nadu supports that it is their cultural practice and which should not be banned, but if we look at the original intent or the original essence of celebrating Jallikattu, it was originally meant to showcase strength and valor. But nowadays, we see that in order to attract youth towards this sport, several rewards are announced, such as automobiles. So that is one tactic. However, we are seeing dilution of the original purity or the essence of this sport. So putting the human life into risk, so that is there, and we need to look what is important for us is going to be the Supreme Court's verdict regarding this. And moving forward, so talking about, there's a conflict going behind the eco-sensitive zones. So what is the actual problem? We see that significantly the parts of the ESZs, there are in 10 states, you can go through the names. So they fall within the scheduled areas which are notified under the fifth schedule of the Constitution. So these areas are populated by the scheduled tribe groups and they are notified by the president under Article 244, where the provisions of the PESA Act, that is the Panchayat Extension to the Scheduled Areas 1996 Act, applies because tribal people are there. So when we talk about the third tier of government, so like the PESA Act, it leads to establishment of the third tier of government in the regions where the scheduled tribal groups are living. So Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, it has shown no inclination to amend the Indian Forest Act, the Wildlife Protection Act, and the Environment Protection Act to comply with the PESA or the Forest Rights Act. So this is one thing, and this is one reason of dispute. And in the forest conservation rules, the compliance with the Forest Rights Act, recognition to forest rights, and the Gram Sabha's consent, these were the preconditions for considering proposals to divert a forest land for the non-forestry purposes, which was done away by the ministry in 2022. And the ministry has also overlooked demands by the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes to restore the erstwhile FRA compliance procedures also. So this is the whole issue, and you should be knowing about what is the eco-sensitive zones. So these are, in simple terms, we can say these are the transition zones between the area of lower protection to an area of higher protection. And that's how you can define and understand it. Then talking about viral nutrition. So this is a very important topic and a new emerging area. So viral nutrition, basically a study, it shows that microbes, they are nourished by consuming viruses itself. So a particular genus of plankton, which is called the Halteria, it can grow and divide given only viruses are there to it. So it feeds on viruses. So here we'll be starting with the plankton. So plankton, they are microscopic organisms that can only move with the current. So they don't have any facilities to actively propel themselves. And the Halteria plankton, they are ciliates, meaning that they have hair-like structures which are called cilia on their surfaces. And a type of plankton that obviously we know that is phytoplankton. So it is found near the surface of many water bodies. So it's an autotroph. Autotroph means that it can manufacture and it can make food for its consumption on its own. So it makes food or synthesizes food by consuming carbon dioxide among other compounds through photosynthesis process. So phytoplanktons are autotrophs, and small fish and some larger planktons like the zooplanktons, they eat the phytoplankton for their nutrition, and these smaller fishes, they are eaten up by the larger fishes, and that's how the food chain goes on. And phytoplanktons, they bring carbon and other nutrients from the atmosphere and sea surface down to the sea floor, and they help replenish the food chain also. So we can say that they can trap the carbon in their own bodies, and that is also, we can say, how they can help in carbon capturing. And they are joined by bacteria that make their own food by oxidizing sulfur iron or hydrogen in a process which is called the chemosynthesis. And now talking about Halteria, so Halteria plankton, they are found in large numbers in, again, fresh water bodies. So they are found in fresh water bodies and they are heterotrophs. So that means that they cannot produce their own food. They need to feed on something else. And instead, they are well known bactivores. So bactivores means they consume bacteria to power themselves. So all these facts are really very important. And remember that they are found in fresh water bodies. They are heterotrophs and they feed on only viruses and bacteria to power themselves up. So government says that SIMI, SIMI is Students Islamic Movement of India. So government says that it aims to mobilize students or youth in the propagation of Islam and obtain support for jihad. So this is what center has to tell the Supreme Court in its affidavit. So it is listing reasons for banning this organization because the government believes that it violates the basic fabric of the constitution, and it wants to basically replace the Indian nationalism with an international Islamic order, and it considers idol worship a sin as well. So these are some of the arguments and reasons provided by government to the Supreme Court. And from geography perspective, you should be knowing that the Italan hydropower project is there in Arunachal Pradesh, and you can find out and locate the Dibang Valley also. Then moving forward, we see, according to the ACER 2022 report, it says that there is widening learning gaps. So it shows that the government schools, they have seen a sharp rise in the enrollment for the first time in 16 years. And another finding is that the basic literacy levels of the children, they have taken a big hit. Obviously, that is because of COVID-19 and the lockdowns. Then we see that their reading ability as compared with their numeracy skills, they have worsened much more sharply. So their reading ability has been impacted, and that has dropped to pre-2012 levels. So that is the finding, and ACER, that is the Annual Status of Education Report, and it was released by Pratham, which is an NGO. And the survey, it focuses on rural districts only. So that is also one thing. And the report, it is being brought out after 4 years. And we see that the families, they have withdrew students from the private schools to save their money, and they've invested in private tuitions. So we can say that this may be the reason that learning gaps, they are sharper in their reading, because the students, they typically choose to study maths and science in tuition classes. So that's why their reading ability and capabilities and the skills have been impacted heavily. Then on the business page, we see that oil demand, it may increase because we see that China's COVID-19 reopening, basically China's economy is reopening, and we can say that Russian supply, it slows under the full impact of the sanctions that has been imposed. And we see that expect that China will drive almost half the global demand growth. And we see that a weak industrial activity and mild winter, it helped cut oil demand in the OECD countries. Then main growth in oil supply is set to come from the US, and the output from the OPEC plus, which includes Russia. So the producer group will decline. So the output from OPEC plus is going to reduce, which is going to be led by Russia. So sanctions on Russia and weak demand from OECD countries and main supply from US is expected. Now we'll take a Financial Express. So here we have, firstly, we expect that in the upcoming budget, the government could bring some relief measures for the exporters. So firstly, looking at the performance of exporters on year basis. So from April, we'll start. April, it was at 30.7%, then it declined to 20%, again rose to 23%. And from July, it was 2%, 1.6, 4.8, went into negative in October, to -16. So that's how we can say the exporters, our exports are performing. And we see that cabinet, it is moved a note for offering aid to develop various districts as export hubs, like we have one district, one product. So that is there, and there's going to be support for the marketing of the products overseas. And talking about the interest subsidy, that may be hiked from 3% to 5% for the select exporters. So these are some, we can say these are the steps which are expected out of the upcoming budget. Then coming to the editorial section, so here we talk about the trend in the tax revenues of the government. So looking at what are the factors why we saw an increase in the tax revenue for the union government for the financial year 2023 was basically because of high inflation, increasing formalization in the economy, and improvement in the collection efficiency. So these were the main three reasons. And one estimate shows that the direct taxes as a share of the overall receipts, they could account for as much as 70% in the financial year 2023, which is up from 60%. And specifically, the share of the personal income tax is tipped to hit 34% of the receipts, which is again an increase from 28%. And it was 22% in financial year 2015. So direct taxes share stands at 70%, and it has increased further. And talking about the share of the personal income tax, that is also at 34%, and that has also increased. So this is pointing towards more formalization. We can say that tax base might have increased and people are now complying more with their obligations and fulfilling their duties. So that's all from here. Now we'll take up the Mint. So in Mint, we'll be talking about why India needs to go for a fresh fertilizer policy. So here we're talking about fertilizers. So how much fertilizer does India consume? So between April and mid-December 2022, the consumption was around 40 million metric tons, and production was 32 million metric tons, and imports were approximately 13 million metric tons. So that is there. And some steps they have been undertaken by the government to improve the availability of fertilizers. That includes assessment of the state-wise requirement every month. Then there was 100% neem coating of urea, which increases the nutrient efficiency. There was monitoring of the crop yield and soil health. And there was online monitoring of the movement of the fertilizers through the integrated fertilizer monitoring system. So the gap between demand and the production was met through timely imports. Then we see what is the impact of the current fertilizer policy that we have. So heavy subsidies, they have prompted many farmers to use the chemical fertilizers like urea, which leads to higher productivity. But again, if you use or if you overuse something in excess, obviously that is going to have some negative effects. So that can affect the soil fertility, it can lead to soil erosion, and also result in drinking water contamination and impact the human lives as a result of unsafe storage practices. This is as per a UN report. So also with the subsidy being released directly to the companies, so the technology inefficient companies, they are being protected. And while attempts they have been made to reform the fertilizer policy, they had to be rolled back after pressure from various quarters. Then what has been the trend in the government expenditure? So we know that after the Russia-Ukraine war started, the prices of fertilizers went up. So the Ukraine war, it has spiked the government spending on food, fertilizer, and fuel subsidy by nearly 70%, which is very huge. And then we see that Russia, it is a major exporter of the liquefied natural gas, which is a critical input for manufacturing of urea, and that has led to higher prices. So this is one of the main reasons why fertilizer prices they shot up. And what steps has the center taken in 2022? So the Department of Fertilizers dispersed subsidies for urea and nutrient-based subsidy and implemented direct benefit transfer. So it also implemented One Nation, One Fertilizer scheme, which aims to ensure that there is timely supply of fertilizers, and it also eliminates the dilemma of choosing from many brands available, because now it has introduced a single brand and that is there. And in the existing village block or sub district in taluk and district level, the fertilizers retail outlets, they are being now converted into the model fertilizer retail outlets. So these are some of the steps that have been taken by the government. And what will the new policy address? So the lower duty on the imported phosphoric acid to raise the competitiveness of the local fertilizer manufacturers, and an incentive for promoting the organic fertilizers that could be proposed, and a task force that has already been formulated and made on biofertilizer and organic fertilizers under Niti Aayog. Then considering the long-term interest of the agriculture and the effects of using the inorganic fertilizers, so saving a huge amount on account of the subsidy support, it's a step in the right direction. So we are also promoting biofertilizer and also encouraging its domestic production. So that is all, and we'll end it with the quote of the day. So it goes like, the world needs resilience, and India is in a position to take the lead, including on supply chain frameworks. So thank you for joining Ansarkari, and I hope that you've enjoyed and understood all the key things that we discussed today. And do not forget to subscribe to Ansarkari, hit the like button and share the video as much as possible. And also you'll be getting the PDF link in the description box. So definitely go through the PDF as well. Thank you again for joining us.